Alright, back at it again on the 38 pickup. Time to jump in the wiring. I want to get this thing started soon to where I can be able to get in it, start it, and move it around if I need to. It's been parked in one place for far too long. And anyway, it needs to get running. It needs to get running so it can be driving around. But kind of what I'm thinking is taking this and mounting it across these two bars. Tucking it way up here like that. Thinking about putting that right there. And the data connector, I haven't decided yet. I'll probably put it over here, somewhere where it's really easy to plug into. Okay, got my fuse box mounted. Try and do this and hold the camera and not get in the way of the light and all that. I think that's gonna work out pretty good. So now I've kind of already started to separate the wires. This is a ground. This is the ECM power relay power. So I'm gonna kind of play with this a little bit and figure out what goes where. So now I have to just sit here. I have to go through these one at a time. Like that one, keep alive memory. That is going to go to one of these fuses. The same fuse, I'm going to hook the data link power to the same fuse, and I believe there's a memory fuse for the gauges. All those will be hooked there to the same thing. So I'm going to figure out, okay, like sending unit wires, I'm going to figure out how I want to route the wires that are coming over here. Brake on off switch, that has to come over here to the brake switch. So I'm going to kind of break these up. I got to figure out how I want to route them, and I'm going to kind of get them going in the direction that they need to go. So before I get too far into what I'm doing here, I got totally sidetracked and didn't get the camera. So every single fuse in here, this is how they had it. These are basically where the fuses plug in. This was all one connector right here. So I need at least 4 fuses that are key on. So in order to do that, I had to back pin this whole setup, get it out of there. Now I have a decent wire to run those 4 fuses on. On this side, I'm going to add another wire because I'm going to run all the relays off of this side. So I'm going to attach another wire to it and just splice it in with this wire. But I did that so I can have at least 4 fuses. I can run this side to the ignition switch. Then I have 4 fuses that are switched. This fuse is going to be key on hot. I think I'm going to use this one for the gauges, and it is going to turn on. It's going to power the control circuits of these 2 relays. Now, one of the relays, I cut the ground side and I attach this green wire here. This is going to go to the engine control module. The engine control module grounds the control circuit for the fuel pump relay to turn on the fuel pump relay. This control circuit I left the ground in, so this control circuit will energize and turn this relay on when I turn the key on. That's going to power the computer, the engine computer. When the engine computer powers up, when the engine computer wants to, it will ground this relay and turn on the fuel pump. So now when we're looking at it like this, we have these 2 wires are going to get wired to that heavy 8 gauge wire coming from the outside. So this is our main power to the fuse panel, main power in. This is going to be the switch, the ignition switched power side to turn all these blue ones on. All these blue ones are from fuses. These are going to be all key on power. One of these, this is yellow, is your output from the relay. and the white one is the trigger for that relay. So these two, one of these will be, one of these yellows will go to the starter, and one of these white ones will go to the ignition switch. This black one's just a ground. This is going to come from the ignition switch. This is all pretty easy now. These four over here are the constant fuses, the constant power fuses. And one of these will be for the ECM power, one will go to the fuel pump. So it should make a lot more sense, be a lot easier to put in now. Alright, so the next step basically after mounting is figuring out the routing of the wiring. I'm pretty sure I'm going to run it this way. I'm going to have these come off like this, and it'll have a little Y back here and a Y right here. It'll go this way and it'll go back this way. I've only hooked up the main power into the fuse panel, and then the first fuse is out to the ignition switch. This is the ignition side of the ignition switch. This is going to power this red wire, which will power these four fuses on this side. And this blue wire is the start wire. That's going to go to one of these two white wires here to energize the starter relay, and then the corresponding yellow will go to this wire here. This goes to the starter solenoid. Other than that, it's going to be a matter of routing these. Battery keep alive memory, that has to wire to the fuse panel. Then key on for the coil power is a key on fuse, so that has to wire to one of these fuses here. There's another wire that I'm going to run the same. The O2 sensor heater. So since we're down 2 O2s, and I deleted a lot of the stuff that was powered along with these, I'm going to go ahead and run these together off of one of these fuses here. Let's see what else. That's about it. There's a keep alive memory that's going to tie up to the data link connector to one of these fuses over here that's key on all the time. Brake on off, this has to go tie into the brake light switch. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and hook this wire up, route some of these simple ones, and then I'm going to, if these need to be lengthened to go where they're going to go, I'm going to lengthen them, or just basically route and get all the wires routed through this end of the harness here. Okay, so this is how it looks so far. This is extra. This is an extra key on fuse. This is actually going to go to the headlight switch. Everything else is in. I've got everything all written down, what it all does, which fuse is for what. The fuse, I need to get the right fuses. These go from 10 to like 10, 20 to 25. I need a 15. I figure I probably need a couple 15s in there. But anyway, I think I'm going to put the gauges in now and start wiring up the gauges. I have the book out. I've been looking at it. And there's really only a couple wires. We got splice the two powers together, splice the two grounds together. You got obviously the 3 sending units, illumination one, and then key on power, and one wire for the speed sensor. So that should be pretty easy, actually. All right, these are the gauges we're putting in. I forget what brand. I forget who makes them. Let me see. These were pretty good. They worked out really nice in the 39. It's the exact same set of gauges. They mount just like any gauge. Any other gauge has the bracket that goes behind there. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these two things mounted real quick. These were really easy. You have the two powers, splice the two powers together, the two grounds spliced together. This white one that's not hooked up yet is for illumination. That will go to the headlight switch, to the dimmer, and then you have sending unit wires, and that's what I'm down to. This is the fuel sender wire, and the orange one here is for the speed sensor, which I might be able to tap in the speed sensor up here. I'm not sure yet. I'm gonna get the fuel pump hooked up. Oh yeah, I gotta get the fuel pump hooked up. So fuel pump and sending unit, and I need to build the ground for the dash, ground for the cab. Okay, so right down here under which now is right in the center of the door on the inside of the frame, there's a bulkhead connector right here that the harness would go up into the floorboard of the Explorer. So I just cut that plug off, and I'm going to use this Ford harness that goes back, so it'll be factory connections everywhere back. I found my wire for the fuel pump, the fuel sender. So I have fuel pump, fuel sender. The white one is the speed sensor, and the big yellow and green ones are brake light and running light, which that connector right there by my meter on top of the tire, that was the connector that plugged into the charcoal canister vent solenoid all the way in the back. Those wires are big enough to use for the brake light and tail light, so I just tapped into them up here. When the tail lights and brake lights go on, I'll just cut that plug off right there and it'll be ready to go. So now I'm just going to run this harness, route this harness up inside the cab. I can make my connections right in there, and piece of cake. That's a factory connection there, and I just shortened it and put an end on it. Simple. Had a couple more wires there, but those components aren't in the truck yet, so everything that I need to start it should be done. I just need to get the radiator in it. Alright, well that pretty much does it for the wiring. There is a little bit of stuff that needs to be done. Obviously when the radiator's in, the fan's in, the headlights go on, there's still a little bit of wiring to do. But all the engine control stuff, fuel pump, gauges, all that stuff is wired and done. So hopefully the next video we'll be firing this thing up. So thanks for watching.